Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. You are listening to the final installment of NTC for the calendar year of 2023. I'm Aaron Washington, your host. Glad to be back with everybody on the 91st installment of the NTC pod, brought to you by Sports Business Classroom. You may see an unfamiliar face here joining me on this podcast if you guys are watching on YouTube. Avi is joining me. He's produced some great content for NTC over the past several months. He's primarily been in the writing scene for us. He has some great articles on our website. I encourage you guys to check that out. But today he is making his first appearance on the podcast. He is a rookie in the podcast scene, but we want to bring him in, get him up to speed. He has some great thoughts in the in-season tournament and a couple other teams that we're going to discuss here today. And I wanted to bring him on so he has the opportunity to do that. So Avi, thanks again for joining the pod, man. Glad to have you here on your first go around here. Hopefully it'll be a good experience for you, man. So you'll want to come back. But in any case, hope you had a great Christmas. Merry Christmas to you. Happy New Year in advance, and ready to get this show on the road, man.
I'm ready. I mean, Merry Christmas to you. Merry Christmas to everyone out there. And I'm like Jaime Jaquez, man. I'm a rookie, but I'm just here to slot in and take up those valuable minutes. Just soak up some good minutes, give you what you need.
I love it, man. That attitude is really going to take you a long way, just as it has for Jaime. So
yeah,
I love to hear that, man. That's some great stuff. So Avi, we're going to get this pod here started, man, on a little in-season tournament talk. We're circling back here. We talked about the in-season tournament not too long ago. I want to say it's been about 3 or so weeks since we talked about the tournament before you came on. We discussed how things are shaping up leading into the tournament, into the knockout rounds. So we touched on each of the teams going in there, talked about some prizes, talked about the overall format. This one's going to be a little bit different. So this is in the aftermath of the in-season tournament. We're going to look at the two teams that were in the finals in the championship matching up, and we're going to see how they've been performing after the in-season tournament, because the results are really interesting. They're very close. I looked at the numbers, their records, their performance, and that there's a lot of similarities between these two teams. And that should reinforce one of the points that you brought up to me when we were texting back and forth a few days ago about what the in-season tournament could possibly do for teams if they make a really long run into the tournament. So to get this started, we're going to look at one of the two teams that made the championship. This is the runner-up for the tournament. So we're looking at the Indiana Pacers to get this whole thing started, Avi. So the Pacers had a really great run leading up to the in-season tournament. They had a fantastic run. They beat the Bucks. They beat the Celtics. They were looking great. Halliburton was looking like one of the best players in the NBA over that stretch. And they had a lot of great things going. Just to touch on Halliburton here real quick, his performance. The first 18 games of the season, he was at 27 points a game, 52% from the field, 44% from three, 88% from the free throw line, adding a 12 assists a game. Monster numbers. Halliburton was a superstar. He was carrying the Pacers to a lot of great wins, doing some great things for them. Here's their current situation since the in-season tournament. Overall, the record is now 15-14, still doing okay, but they've cooled off a little bit since that incredible run. They're a game and a half behind the Knicks for 7th. They're 1 game ahead of the Nets for 9th. So their first post in-season tournament game was on December 11th. They beat the Pistons. Good for them. They beat the Pistons. I wouldn't say that's necessarily a really impressive win. We're going to get to them here in a little bit. But their next 4 games, they lost. So they played the Bucks, the Wizards, the Wolves, and the Clippers. And their overall record since the in-season tournament is 3-6. So not a great run for them in the days since. It's been about 3 weeks since they finished up. The last 2 weeks in particular, I looked up their numbers on cleaning the glass. 17th in offense, 30th in defense. So their defense remains very poor as it was before the tournament, but their offense has really dropped off a cliff. They've gone from, I want to say they were pretty much top in the league when they got to the in-season tournament and they made that incredible run. Now they're 17th. We're talking about average to just below average. So those are the numbers. That's where they stand right now. Just not all that impressive. I want to say they've been kind of mediocre to below average since they finished the in-season tournament. So Avi, to really give you the floor here, to really kind of bring you into this podcast scene, get you on the floor, give you a chance to contribute here. Uh, I'm interested to get your thoughts on the Pacers, how they've been performing after the in-season tournament, and also throw out some of the thoughts that you gave me the other day about the in-season tournament itself and how that can affect teams kind of leading off from that the rest of the season. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, first, as you kind of gave the rundown of their opponents, some of their offensive struggles, I feel like, can also be attributed to the fact that they were playing some really high level teams. Like the Wizards' loss was inexcusable, but some of the other ones, you kind of understand what happened. Some of that is a little bit of like variance with who you're playing opponent wise. But some of it is also the fact that after the in-season tournament, it felt like some of the smoke and mirrors that they'd been using to generate offense haven't been working as efficiently as teams have kind of focused and had a chance to really watch their knockout round games and kind of discover some of their flaws. So one of the biggest issues that the Pacers are now kind of facing is the fact that their transition offense isn't as lethal as it used to be. Primary reason is teams are getting much more specific and much more detailed and focused about keeping an eye on Halliburton as soon as the possession ends. There's always at least one person ready to pick him up full court. Even the Pistons, when the match they lost, and it's the Detroit Pistons, a lot of times Killian Hayes was basically just a watchdog, just prowling to see where is Tyrese Halliburton. Let me find him. Let me pick him up full court. Let me bother him a little. They're also doing a much more effective job at kind of making sure he can't go to his right hand. Because when he goes to his right hand, it's not that he's necessarily a better passer, but in terms of the shots he can create, his step back, all of it comes much more naturally to him off of his right. So forcing the left kind of decreases their offense that way too. The other issue they've had on offense is the fact that teams kind of figured out that while they have some shot creators, they don't have a real power forward who can create shots. So Obi Toppin kind of got exposed a little bit. I don't want to say exposed, it's a bit harsh, but he kind of got exposed for not being able to put the ball on the deck during closeouts and be able to create shots for himself or others very effectively.
Mm-hmm.
And so now, recently, the Pacers have been trying to change lineups. They substituted Jalen Smith in for Obi Toppin at the 4, which kind of feels like just trading in like exchanging deck chairs on a sinking ship. You're not really doing much here. And then
Right.
defensively, they were bad before. They feel so much worse now. I was watching their clips. Oh my god! I mean, even watching
That's rough.
clips, watching the match, zooming in, nobody can stop the ball anymore. Some of it, I think, is that as the season has gone on, they've gotten a little bit more tired. They're not as fresh as they were at the start of the season. So
Yep.
their individual defense is suffering a little. They're just one step slow. And considering that they play often like these small lineups where it's like Bruce Brown or Ben Mathurin trying to act as a 4, which it's not really effective. It's making them struggle more than they would. Anytime there's a guard to guard pick and roll, they're suffering immensely. Those are some of the main issues. The biggest issue is really the fact now that teams have figured out that if you aggressively go to the cup and just focus on your drive and kick game, there's not a single person other than Miles Turner who can get in your way, and it's really hurting them.
Yeah. Avi, I want to address that two ways. First, on the offensive points you made, I think the decrease in the transition effectiveness, like you said, it can be attributed to fatigue as well. You think about how much energy it takes to consistently be a transition team, full court transition. The NBA is so fast. So if you're really kind of putting on the gas even more consistently throughout an entire game, that wears on you, especially for a guy like Halliburton. I don't know how much you play pickup, Avi, but if you're constantly dribbling the ball up and down the court, side to side, playing all these moves, like it's a drain on you
It's rough.
as far as your stamina goes, big time. So I think for him, he is the catalyst, he's the engine. So if he is declining as far as his effectiveness in the transition game, it's going to affect everybody because he gets everybody else involved. And to your point that you made about Obi Toppin and these other guys that can't put the ball on the floor, if he is less effective in transition, those other players now have to create more offense for themselves because it's not coming in transition. It's not easy layups. It's not lobs. It's not anything like that, like easy cuts to the rim. So now if they have to work in the half court setting, they get exposed, like you were saying. It's easier to defend guys like Obi Toppin and Aaron Neesmith if they're having
Yeah.
to create their own offense. That's not their bread and butter. They're not super effective in that kind of offense. So I think that all kind of ties together. I totally agree with you when what you were saying about the fatigue and about the half court and about the rotations. And they also made another lineup change recently. They subbed out Buddy Hield over the past couple of games. They put in Nimhard in his place as another kind of creator as far as generating more going towards the rim, getting other people involved, another ball handler in the lineup to kind of address some of those issues you brought up. And I can see where they're coming from, and it may work to an extent to kind of help their team out. But if I move forward and I address the other side of the ball, you just mentioned the defensive side, it's not going to help at all on that side of the floor. Nimhard is small as well. He's about the same size as Buddy Hield, probably a little bit better of a defender if we're talking about just man to man, but he still has a size deficit. The front court is still undersized. Obi Toppin is not stopping anybody. Neesmith hustles, like he plays hard, and he can guard some wings and definitely guards. Bigger forwards, centers, it's just not going to happen. The Lakers, there's nothing he can do. He was so
Timberwolves too. Oh my God.
The Timberwolves. Those are the type of teams that are going to give him a lot of problems. So I think for the Pacers, they're just going to be a bad defensive team all year, even with Miles Turner doing what he does in the paint. If for some reason he's drawn out in the perimeter, there's a switch, they're done. They have no chance. So I don't see them finishing any higher than maybe 25th in defense. There's just no way to address that, I think, this year. They can do some things to rectify the offense, but when you have a defense that poor, and I just think there's a ceiling as far as how far they can go. They're 8th right now, maybe 6th, I would say, is the best case scenario. They're not too far out of 6th or 7th, but I think that's as far as they go this year. But all that being said, they're still a lot of fun. They've had a lot of success this season. I think they finished in the playoff picture. That's a good season for them. They made a lot of progress. I don't think you can say too much about them other than that. They can still make some moves later on. They can make some trades. They can do some things to kind of fortify the roster and find that 4. But in the meantime, I think, hey, they're fun. Halliburton is establishing himself, and they really made a name for themselves on the national stage. But speaking on the national stage, a lot of teams got to see them. I think people started to game plan for them since they were, in the championship. So how do you feel about how the in-season tournament has affected the Pacers specifically in the game since?
I think about it in 2 ways. In the long term, for roster construction, I think it might actually be somewhat of a good thing that their people were able to key in on their flaws early, and so they're getting exposed a little bit earlier for how they've been getting away with some of their tactics of using tempo and pace to try to boost their offense maybe more than they're actually capable of. So in that sense, it's good because it kind of shows them, oh, okay, maybe Obi Toppin is more of a backup 4, not a starting 4. We still need a starting power forward. So maybe it'll incentivize them to go into the trade market to find a starter. But in the short term and the long term, at least for this season, I feel like it probably hurt them somewhat just because teams are now so focused on Halliburton. He was already going to be tired from his style of play, but now with the extra attention, I feel like it's only a matter of time before his shot making and his playmaking start dipping further and further. And without him, this team suffers. And then defensively as well, the one thing I started noticing after the Lakers game, I started noticing more and more teams attack their small lineups by playing some sort of action where the big will catch the ball in the high post or the free throw line and kind of survey the floor from there. Because there's no one to really pressure someone that tall because all their lineups are just so small. So I feel like that's another attribute where the in-season tournament kind of started showing, oh, here's some flaws on offense, here's some flaws on defense. And overall, I think it might sink their regular season record below what it might have been otherwise.
Good point for sure. Yeah, I mean, there's just so many flaws on that team defensively to exploit. Halliburton's their best player. They kind of run into an issue, the same kind of issue with the Hawks that Hawks have been having recently. You have a monster offensive player, a fantastic distributor, great shooter, all these things, but defensively they're just so they're such a weak point that it just hurts the rest of the team. And you see the Hawks; they're not much better than the Pacers defensively. So when you have your point man at the center at the point of attack that's that poor, it's a trickle down effect. You really have to have a team 2 through 5 to be able to compensate for that. I don't think there's very many players that can make that happen in terms of kind of rectifying that issue that you're going to have when he's trying to navigate pick and rolls, and it's just all a mess once you get past that first point of the action. So I definitely agree with you on that one. But let's turn our attention here, Avi, to the other team that's also suffering a little bit since the in-season tournament ended. The Lakers here, their record is really similar to the Pacers. So I mentioned before that the Pacers are 3-6 since the in-season tournament ended. The Lakers are 2-6 since the in-season tournament ended. So you see some similarities there. The Lakers are also in a similar spot in the standings. They're 16-15. They are ninth in the West, and they're 1 game over 500, just like the Pacers. So they're tied with the Rockets for 8th, and they're just a half game ahead of the Suns for 10th. So the Lakers are very close to kind of being out of that play-in tournament range. They have a lot of work to do in order to get to where they want to be. I thought they can compete for a top 4 seed in the West. It's still possible. There's still a lot of games to go, but they have a lot of work to do in order to get to that front. So since the in-season tournament, here's how they've done. First game after the tournament was against the Mavs on December 12th. They lost that game. They proceeded to lose 4 of their next 5 games against the Spurs, the Knicks, the Bulls, the Wolves, and then they also just lost to the Celtics on Christmas Day. So that's never a good look. If you're losing to the Celtics at home, that stings a little bit more than the other losses.
Yeah.
Just putting that out there. That's a big rivalry. Last 2 weeks, their efficiency marks on offense and defense. So 23rd on offense, 24th on defense. So still in the bottom 10 defensively, just like the Pacers. But they're even worse than the Pacers on offense, 23rd, as opposed to the Pacers being 17th. So on both ends of the floor over the last 2 weeks, the Lakers have suffered in a big way. They just lost Gabe Vincent to a knee surgery. That's going to be about 8 weeks before he's even reevaluated. So that hurts their point guard spot. D'Angelo Russell is in trade rumors. We talked about D'Angelo Russell on this podcast previously. They benched him. They're bringing in Jared Vanderbilt to start. So they're trying to fortify the defense. What it looks like to me, they're trying to lean into that part of the floor. And, I don't really hate that move. D'Angelo Russell, for all his offensive abilities, is a turnstile on defense, just like Halliburton, just like Trae Young. He really brings your ceiling down defensively because of his weaknesses on that end of the floor. So now they're in trade rumors again, and they've been rumored to be looking at Zach LaVine and DeJounte Murray. And I want to get your thoughts on DeJounte Murray, Avi, because I personally don't think Murray is the guy for them. Murray is a ball-dominant guard. Yes, he's a great defensive guard. He's going to be better than Russell on that front, but he loves the mid-range. He loves to jack up some pretty bad shots at times. He's not a high-frequency three-point shooter. He's not a particularly efficient three-point shooter, and that doesn't help the Lakers in one of their biggest flaws on offense, which is the three-point line. They're 19th in three-point percentage, 36%, and they're 29th in the league on corner threes, 33.5%. DeJounte Murray doesn't take a lot of threes. That's another struggle for the Lakers. They don't get up enough threes, and he's only average in percentage. So that's how I feel about it. How do you feel about the DeJounte Murray trade and how the Lakers have done over the past 2 to 3 weeks?
I love DeJounte Murray, but same as with the Hawks, I feel like if you are not in a coaching staff which is able to maximize his on-ball game, you are sapping the potential for what he can be as a player and as a contributor to winning basketball. And when you're on the Lakers, when you already have Austin Reeves, LeBron competing for touches of the ball, I don't think, just echoing everything you said, I don't think DeJounte Murray is the move for them, even if he is a clear upgrade as a defender at the guard spot. Just to touch on a quick point, when we talk about Halliburton, D'Angelo Russell, and Trae Young as poor defenders, with Halliburton, I do think there's a scenario where if you constructed a strong defensive lineup around him, you could pass by. With Trae Young and
Yeah,
D'Angelo Russell, those two to me are such defensive eyesores.
there's
I
just
don't know
no
how you
hope.
can build a good defense with them, or even maybe even a
Yeah.
top 10 defense. I don't think you can build it with those guys, which is part of the reason D'Angelo Russell got benched. The problem is, other than Davis and LeBron, I don't think the Lakers have any other two-way players. Austin Reeves, really good offensive shot creator. Defensively, he's not the guy I want. He can get exposed in man to man. He can get exposed in screening actions. Like his defense is still rough. He's improving and he
Mhm.
hustles, but
Yeah.
he's not there yet. And then when they try all these lineups with, oh, okay, we'll stick Vanderbilt and Reddish in. Well, okay, that solves the defense. You have Torian Prince as well. These guys are defensively sound and they can follow your game plan perfectly and they're savvy. But I wouldn't call them defensive stoppers the way I would someone like Herb Jones. And then
Mhm.
offensively, I don't really trust any of them to put the ball on the floor and create. And in the case of Reddish and Vanderbilt, I don't trust them to make a single corner three pointer. So
No, not at
it,
all.
that's kind of where they are. They are what they look like. They're a team of LeBron, Anthony Davis, and just finding a bunch of castaway parts and trying to put it all together into a functioning team. And to me, of all the teams in the top 11 in the West right now, they're the one that I feel like is starting to slowly trend downwards, unless they make some moves at the trade deadline.
Mhm. Avi, all your concerns are very valid about this team, and they have been trending down along with the Suns. It's funny because when you look at them and the Suns, they have opposite problems.
Yeah.
The Suns have all the offensive creation in the world. They have all the shooting in the world. They cannot get a stop to save their life. The Lakers can put it together an incredible defensive unit, like you said, Reddish, Vanderbilt, Anthony Davis is probably a top 5 defender in the entire NBA, if we're being honest. He's absolutely incredible. But their offensive ceiling is just so low in today's NBA. I mean, if you're going to be a low frequency 3-point team,
Yep.
and then a middle to below average accuracy 3-point team, there's just not a whole lot you can do with that as far as just keeping up with teams offensively in terms of the point totals from night to night. You're really just going to struggle on that point, on that end of the floor. So what they do is they try to compensate by getting a lot of points in the paint. They do every single game. They'll give you 50, 60, 70 points in the paint. They're top 5 in rim percentage,
Yep.
just about 69%. So I want to say I think they're 3 or 4 in terms of rim percentage per cleaning the glass. So they can bully you inside with Anthony Davis, with LeBron, with Reeves, with players like that can get to the rim, they can finish at the rim. But that's not enough in today's NBA. If you're finishing at the rim, but you can't make anything outside the 3-point line, the math is not mathing. It's just not going to work out that way for you. So that's the unfortunate truth for the Lakers. That's where they're at. We're probably going to see another trade for them. I don't know who that ends up being. If we talk about Zach LaVine, I mean, yes, he will hurt. He will help with your shooting ability. But then again, it's like, what do you do on defense? It kind of brings up the same problem. So it's like for the Lakers, it's like, how do you strike that balance? That's the problem. Davis and LeBron can give you both of the best of both worlds. But other than that, talking about Austin Reeves, I saw those defensive issues in the World Cup this past summer.
Yes.
He got targeted. Teams were like, "Hey, go at him. Like, don't go at Ant-Man. Don't go at Jaren Jackson.
Just
Go
going
at
him and Brunson
Reeves."
all the time.
Exactly. And that's one of the
Yeah.
reasons why we had such a hard time. If those guys are sharing the court together, or even just one of them, I mean, you're just really vulnerable out there on the court. So that's the Lakers' dilemma. And I wouldn't be surprised if they make a move. They've made a move, it seems like every season, around midseason. And I wouldn't be surprised if this season is any different.
Yeah, I think they have to. In comparison them with the Suns, at least the Suns have hope. The Suns still have some meat on the table left in terms of, okay, Bradley Beal comes back. We incorporate him and Eric Gordon and Booker and Durant better into staggering them offensively so we can be even more dynamic. Maybe that'll cover up for our defense. The Lakers, as currently constructed, I don't think they have any avenues. And considering LeBron's timeline, his age, you know, one of the greatest players ever. We need to maximize his potential. They kind of have to make a move, and I think everyone knows it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's really surprising to me at this point, Avi, that LeBron is still relied on for so much for this team at
Yeah.
pretty much 39 years old. I think he's less than a week out from 39. I just never would have thought that in year 21 that he would still kind of be the savior for this team. He's kind of like Kate Cunningham right now. It's like he drops 40 and they lose. Like it's really unfortunate to see for them. So I mean, I was fooled. I thought that their offseason was great. Bringing in Wood, bringing in Vincent, bringing in all these other guys to help this team, I thought was the move. Extending Vanderbilt, extending Hachimura, I thought looked fantastic, and I thought that would get them a top 4 or 5 seed, but it just hasn't worked out that way. Hachimura's shooting hasn't carried over. With Vanderbilt, he's been hurt. He hasn't been really consistent, especially in offense. He just can't really give you much on that end of the floor. So they're in a real conundrum right now. And I think LeBron and Davis stay healthy. That's the other part about this. They've been pretty much
Yeah,
healthy
that's right.
and they're still in this position. So that's not a great sign for them. And I don't know, unless something drastic changes, maybe like with another midseason move, I think they could be looking at maybe a 7 or 8 seed finish, if not lower, just because of their limitations on either one side of the floor or the other one. So it's kind of like a pick your poison at this point.
Absolutely. I mean, it's just rough watching LeBron have to do this at this age. Like you'd think happy early birthday to LeBron, by the way, but I mean, it's just rough having a 39-year-old have to carry so much of the offense. Some quarters it feels like he's moseying up and down the court, just knowing, okay, can they just keep it close so I can regain some of my momentum back and find the opportunity to split the defense and go through the lane. But having to rely on that so much at this moment, they need more offensive talent, but they need someone who won't completely tank their defense, and
Exactly.
that's hard to find right now.
It really is. It's tough sledding, man. So we'll have to see how they address that. But the first move for them has been to move Russell to the bench, and we'll see how that works over the next 5 games or so. I'm interested to check in on their offensive and defensive efficiency marks in another couple of weeks and see how it's changed. Maybe it goes back to the defensive side. I mean, that's honestly how they won the tournament, was a defensive focused lineup. They really clamped
Yep.
down and they made teams pay on the defensive end of the floor. So they're going to have to get back to that identity if they have any shot at being a six top 6 seed in the West, to kind of stay out of that play-in mix. So another player here that's had to carry the load for their teams and hasn't been working out whatsoever is the Detroit Pistons. Unfortunately, Avi, it's one of those scenarios. It's kind of like, it's so bad you can't look away. It's something like that.
Yes.
It's really it's fascinating. So we talked about them also not too long ago on this pod. Ian Begley with SNY TV for covering the Knicks. I spoke with him about the Pistons, and this is before they broke the streak for the longest single season losing consecutive losses in the NBA. But as of today, they are 2-28, 27-game losing streak, heading into a matchup with the Boston Celtics in TD Garden. And we'll get to the Celtics in a minute. We're going to end this pod on a good note. So stay tuned, everybody. It's not going to be all doom and gloom for the whole way. But I mean, the Pistons, it's tough, man, because they had opportunities to break the streak. They played the Wizards. They played the Grizzlies before Ja came back, before Marcus Smart came back. They played the Jazz. They played 2 games in a row against the Nets. And then we know the Nets are not a particularly great team. Right now they're about 9th in the Eastern Conference. So they had some chances to win, and they couldn't get over the hump. And I think one of the main reasons for that is because of their clutch time performance. So NBA.com has them ranked 29th in clutch performance per net rating. So they've played 33 clutch minutes this season. Their net rating in those 33 minutes is negative 60.2. Believe it or not, that's not the worst mark in the league. The Wizards are worse. That's the only team that's worse in the NBA. That's kind of crazy to think about. But they're bottom 3 in pretty much every stat you can think of. 30th in offense, 27th in defense. And I think the most depressing part about this whole scenario for them is the fact that their schedule has been pretty favorable to this point. Uh, it's all downhill from here. So, looking at their next 6 games, I'm going to list these teams, and I want to ask you a question, Avi, based on the schedule here that's coming up for them. Tonight, they play Boston in Boston. They have a home game against the Raptors after that, which is funny because I've looked on Twitter and people are just frightened, really scared that the Raptors are going to be the one to lose.
Yeah.
But their next 4 games after that, the Rockets, the Jazz again, the Warriors, and the Denver Nuggets, all of them are on the road. Avi, question for you. Do they break the streak over this next 6 games of their schedule?
The optimism in me and my heart wants to say yes, they finally win a match against the Jazz after not beating them when half the lineup was out. Maybe this time they'll finally do it. But I mean, after watching them, I can't say yes. It's even with some of the improvements they've made, even with the fact that they're now starting to finally play Jaden Ivey more, even though he's really bad defensively, at least he gives them something on offense.
Yeah, I mean,
Even with that, it's so hard to say that they can win a match because when watching their film, I just to watch the Pistons, I started watching them really closely, set by set, and I just started thinking to myself, is Monty Williams coaching this team? This looks nothing like the Suns from 2 years ago. The Suns from 2 years ago,
nope.
yeah, there'll be times where the ball gets stuck, or yeah, there'll be times where it's just, hey, Chris Paul, you're Chris Paul, Hall of Famer, you go do your thing. Booker,
Right.
do your thing. There was definitely some of that. There wasn't as much of a focus on focusing on making sure rim attempts and threes were high. Like there was still some, okay, you guys prefer the mid range. Sure, go a little wild, even if it's not optimal shot selection sometimes. But it wasn't this. With the Pistons, every basket Cade or Ivy or anyone gets is a tough bucket. It's almost all isolation or basic pick and rolls. Those Spain actions that they were so well known for with the Suns, almost completely gone. Nobody other
Hmm.
than Boyan ends up doing anything of significance off ball. When Cade has the ball, most of the time, Ivy is just standing there at the wing being like, pass it to me. Same the other way around. It's like they have almost no synergy on the court on offense. And then defensively, almost all their guard defenders are rough. And then, of course, they have Asar Thompson, who is incredible as a defender at the moment, but he might be the singular worst offensive player in the league right now. Like it's when he gets the ball and he's outside of 10 feet, you can just turn away. It's rough.
It is. No spacing, man. His
Yeah.
3-point shot it's a long way to go. We knew that going into the draft. But with a team like this, you have Cade, you have Isaiah Stewart, these other non-floor spacers, Jalen Duren. That's rough. That's rough. So, I mean, honestly, I think I'm going to go with you on the streak continues over the next 6 games. That Utah game is definitely their best shot, although this time they will be on the road. So it's terrible, man. I just feel bad for the fans. Even though I think I saw this on Twitter the other day, they're still 15th in attendance, which is crazy. Just
God, that
looking
is
at their
so
streak.
sad.
Yeah, I mean it's sad, but you got to applaud them that they haven't jumped ship,
Yeah,
despite.
I agree with that.
Yeah,
Bec-
I respect it. You know,
I mean, they have good reason to jump ship. The fact that
they
Boyan and
do.
Alec Burks are still on this team, it is not good management. Boyan's defense was suspect 5 years ago. Right now, when I'm watching him, once he came back, granted, he came back from some time off being injured and whatnot, but watching him on defense, he's about as bad as anyone, maybe even worse than most on that team defensively. Joe
Mhm.
Harris, when he plays in his spare minutes, looks kind of like a shell of himself. Alec Burks hasn't been able to hit any shots since last year. It's getting really rough, and the worst part is when I'm watching Jalen Duren, it just makes me a little it makes me mad, honestly. I'm watching clips of him. He has these creative ideas when you pass the ball to him in the post or at the free throw line as a hub, where he wants to find a cutter. He wants to find someone near the basket where he can where he can kind of act as the offensive central engine. But because the spacing around him is so bad, no one respects Stewart's jump shot. the paint is always super crowded and no one's really moving much off ball. Almost every action he tries, it's a 50-50% chance whether it'll be a contested layup or whether it'll be a turnover that goes the other way. So
Hmm.
I'm watching Jalen Duren. I remember how he was as a prospect and the flashes he showed as, okay, maybe this will be the next big who, with some molding, if he was on a team like the Heat, maybe you could develop him the way you've developed Bam Adebayo. And to see the way he's being treated right now, it it just makes me so mad. And I know
It's
Monty
rough
Williams is capable of being a like a 21st century offensive coach. Some of the stuff he was
for
doing with
sure.
Booker to help unlock him when he first escalated from, "Ooh, great player, we love Booker," to, "Oh my God, look at him now."
Like
Some
world
of that was
class.
the Iverson cuts that they're using him on, face cuts in front of his defender when they're trying to cut him off. It's I don't see any of that. It it it
No.
doesn't look like a modern offensive team. And then defensively, it has all the worst attributes of a modern defensive team. It's like the worst of both worlds. It's like a
Yep.
1990s isolation offense stuck with some of the worst defense from the modern era. Ugh,
Pretty
it's
much.
bad. It's
Pretty
bad.
much. Like you said it. It's just on both ends of the floor. There's just no continuity. It's like from game to game, they're not really building on anything. There's no progress. There's no
Yeah.
real innovation there. It's just kind of the same thing over and over. Uh, but fortunately for the Pistons, they do have one bright spot in this whole crazy season. Cade Cunningham, the number one pick from 2021, has started to kind of find his game. So he's had two 40-point games in the last 5 outings. That's very impressive for him. And the 3-point shot is what's kind of turning the corner, at least in a few games here. So on the 18th and then the 26th, he had a 40-point game, 43 and 41, and he made 6 out of his 9 3-point attempts in those 2 games. So for him, it's still streaky. The other games, he was 0 of 2, 2 of 6, 1 of 5. So it's still up and down. But when it really starts connecting for him from outside the paint, that's where it kind of transforms his game, transforms the game of the whole team. Like you mentioned, Stewart can hit some threes. Doesn't mean teams are going to respect him unless he starts shooting 40% or something. With Duren, he's not going to take any threes. We know this. Killian Hayes, people are going to
So true.
respect him. People are going to respect Azar. So if Cade can kind of turn the corner and start to change the equation for them as far as the shooting goes, that's a huge, huge development for them. So on the season, Cade is averaging 23, 4, and 7. So we know he's a well-rounded prospect. He's a well-rounded player. He can get his teammates involved, high passing ability. His self-creation leaves a little bit to be desired. That's evidenced by the loads of turnovers uh, over the course of this season. He's one of the worst players as far as turning the ball over in the entire NBA. And the 3-point shot is also kind of still getting its way there. 33% for the season, 87% from the line does display some level of shooting potential. That's what we usually look for. We're talking about young players as far as like if their 3-point shot is going to translate. Because honestly, it starts from inside and it builds
Yeah.
outwards. So for him, shooting 87%, okay, maybe he can find his way to league average type of 3-point shot. If he can get to a level of a Luka, we know Luka, except for this year, I think this year he's taken a leap forward as far as his shooting accuracy from three. But before this season, he was typically kind of like a mid shooter. He was 34 to 35% on high volume. So if Cade can get even remotely close to that, maybe he takes 6 threes a game, 7 threes a game, and he can shoot 35%. That could be enough to kind of get over the hump for him in terms of the shooting. So that's a bright spot for them. Hopefully, his game continues to advance, gives fans a little bit of hope. They need something. They need something to grab onto, a player that can really get them some wins. And hopefully, over the next 5 to 6 games, let's say the Jazz have an off shooting night, something happens with that team. K gets hot. Someone else gets hot with him, maybe an Ivy, and then they find just enough of a semblance of defense to get over the hump. It's possible. It could be done. It's just about if all the factors involved are going to coalesce and line at the right time. So we'll see, man. We'll have to see what happens there.
I mean, it's rough. I have some hope for them, and at the same time, I have some thoughts that maybe aren't as hopeful. So on the non-hopeful front, uh, as long as this offense stays as stale as it is, I don't know if it's possible for Cade's 3-point efficiency or outside shooting to improve because almost all the shots he takes are difficult. There are some plays where he's almost doubled. It's not really a double because there's someone in the paint because they're not really respecting whoever's outside supposed to be a shooter. So it's almost like he's doubled and he's having to create on these difficult moves where he's going through
Mhm.
his legs, spin back. It's just some absolutely crazy stuff that you wouldn't see on any normal team. So in terms of the shooting, I actually think that if he were given more open shots and if he were on a team with a semi-functioning offense, I think his 3-point shooting could actually be closer to like what Trey Young's typically ends up being than even beyond what Luka's 3-point shooting is. I don't think as a self creator he'll ever reach the ability to generate 3-pointers on the volume that Luka does. But in terms of
Mhm.
accuracy, I think his shot is pure enough mechanically where he could shoot 38%. He could shoot 39% in some seasons.
Mhm.
But for that, his
Yeah.
it's not that his shot selection is bad, it's that he has no choice but to take these shots because they just get stuck in late clock with him just being like, all right, I guess I'm just gonna have to throw up this grenade. I don't have
Got to
any
do
other
something.
options.
Right.
So in terms of their prospects, I actually think Duran and Cade give them a lot of hope because I still feel like those two cornerstones have been excellent despite their surroundings. It's just
100%.
it's just surrounding them with the right talent over the next trade deadlines, maybe seeing if a new GM needs to be brought in, someone who is better equipped to fill the roster around them, and then maybe thinking about, okay, I still think Monty is a good coach, but maybe we need to start looking at where he's pulling his assistants from. Maybe let's say next year, let's pull someone from the Kings. Let's pull someone from the Nuggets, like how Mike Brown did, where he started pulling ideas from the Hornets, the Nuggets, some other teams to try to generate his offense. I think Monty Williams, because he has that huge contract, I think he's probably going to stay there. I think they need to
Mhm.
start pulling
Yeah.
ideas from other branches of offense so that Cade and Duran will have space to be able to do what they do best.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's a great point. The spacing for the team is so bad. I think it's dragging down his 3-point percentage.
So
So
bad. Yes.
100%. There's things they can do. It's a lost season, and this losing streak may extend several more games. But there are changes they can make so they can get a head start on next season and hopefully find themselves nowhere near the situation ever again. This needs to be a one and done.
Yeah.
Never
Oh
even
my God.
sniff this level of losing again. This is just beyond terrible. It's hard to believe this is even happening. Uh, let's turn this around real quick, Avi, for the last segment of our pod here. The Celtics, on the other hand, are enjoying a fantastic season behind the play of their two franchise cornerstones, Brown and Tatum. But we have to give a shout out to some of the other pieces on this team that are making a difference. Horford continues to chug along. He's still in the NBA. He's still in the rotation. He gives them spot minutes, 20, 25 minutes a game, doing what he does. He's been doing for a long time. So got to give him credit. Sam Hauser is shooting the lights out, shooting the leather off the ball.
Yes.
It seems like every shot he throws up goes in. So you have to give him some props there on that front, 100%. Peyton Pritchard is a feisty little guard. He gets in the teeth of the defense. He can make some plays even at a small stature. So I love the way Peyton Pritchard approaches the game as a guy that's like 5'10", 5'11". Like he just wants to win. You can see it. He wants to win bad. So Drew Holiday, the pickup they made over the summer, a huge
Yes.
trade, very solid. Nothing spectacular from Holiday, but like, man, you can just rely on him every single night to make something happen for your team. But I wanted to bring this conversation over to one of the brightest spots, through the first 30 or so games. Uh, so this brings us to Derek White. And you don't get to a 23-6 record, 14-0 at home, best record in the NBA. Like you look at all their statistics are fantastic. Best net rating, second best point differential in the NBA, fourth in offense, fourth in defense. So we just talked about the Lakers being 24th and 24th in like both offense and defense,
Yeah,
23rd, 24th.
23rd, 24th. Yeah.
Yeah, because they have players that are one-sided, either in offense or defense. The Celtics have a player that is fantastic on both ends of the floor. This is how you get to be elite in both categories. Derek White deserves a lot of credit here.
Yes.
JJ Redick posted on his Twitter the other day. Twitter X, I call it Twitter.
I call Twitter.
It's
I'll
always
stand
Twitter to
by
me.
it. I
Me
bet it's going to
too.
change at
Like,
some point. I'll stand by it. I'm going to wait for it to come all the way around.
Yep, it needs to go full circle. X is not cutting it for me, man.
Yeah, it's not. It's just not it.
No. But on his Twitter, JJ Redick said that, hey, Derek White is an all-star. And the casuals look at his numbers and say there's no way. Because he's only averaging 16 points a game, 3 rebounds, 5 assists. But if we look at his advanced metrics, we look at his efficiency, 42% from 3, 6.5 attempts a game. Incredible defender, ridiculous screen navigator, great hands, great anticipation, and a very underrated rim protector. And you may say, hold on, he's 6'4", 190 pounds. How's he a rim protector? The dude just knows where to be. He just hustles and he knows where to be. So you can be Mark Williams at the rim. You know, you can be a Daniel Gafford at the rim and say, like, this is an easy layup or dunk.
What he did to Jimmy Butler, man.
Yeah. Oh, don't remind me, man. That's just bringing back trauma. But Derek White is just incredible. And the crazy part about it is he was acquired last February. This is February 22 for Josh Richardson, Romeo Langford, a 2022 first-round pick that turned into Blake Wesley, who is really not even playing for the Spurs right now, and the right to swap 2028 first-round picks. So that's still 5 years away, 4.5 years away. So those are the facts for Derek White. All-star consideration is definitely warranted. He has a star in his role. He's an excellent starter, excellent reserve, whatever the role is for him, and he just gets it done at both ends of the floor. What else can you say? He's incredible.
I mean, he's phenomenal. Also, I find it so funny when people are just looking at his raw stats and think that's not all-star worthy. Not because they're necessarily wrong. I mean, he's an all-star consideration for me. Just because when you go back, like I've tried to keep track of who I thought were all-star performers going all the way back until 2014-15. And when I start looking at some of those seasons where I'm looking at who made the all-star game or who I thought was worthy, it just shows how far the league has come in terms of the skill development and the shot creation, that Derek White's stats are thought of as, that's not, those aren't enough points. That's not enough assists to be an all-star, when 7-8 years ago, that would be more than enough. So that's just one point. Secondly, what he has done, I don't have words to explain it. Over the last 5-6 years, every single year, he has improved on something. Whether it be his ability to make shots, his ability to function as a tertiary creator or a secondary creator now, where he can pass the ball efficiently, he can set picks for people, he operates well in the pick and roll, he's becoming a good spot-up shooter. He's improved on everything. He was already coming out of college a pretty good shot-blocking guard, but now he's just, I mean, there are power forwards who can't block the way he does. Some of the verticality plays he makes, some of the verticality plays he makes now are even levels better than what he was even 2 years ago as a vertical shot blocker. It's just incredible what he is. I would give him serious consideration for an all-star. I'm not ready. I haven't sat through it yet and thought about who I think should be all-stars this year, but his name would definitely come up for me, and I'd make the case he has arguably been their third best player.
I think it's clear. I think he's clearly been their third best player. When you look at what he's done at both ends of the floor, he is all defensive first team material.
Yes.
He is incredibly efficient. He can finish well at the rim. He can shoot the lights out off the ball at 6 attempts a game from 3. He can create his own shot. You know, he can work in the pick and roll. He can fill every role on offense, off ball, on ball, being a cutter, being a guy coming off of pin downs, being a guy that can run the action, be like a point guard, essentially, on the court. He can be in the dunker spot. He can, rotate perfectly on the backside of the ball and protect the rim like we were talking about. So, yeah, I mean, I think he's clearly been the third best player. All due respect to Porzingis, he's been awesome. But I mean, Derek White has just been fantastic. And I wanted to link his shooting to the team in overall, because the team as a whole, they are 8th in 3-point shooting in the NBA at 38%. They're 2nd in corner 3-point shooting at 46, basically 47%. So we know that's
You're
like,
incredible.
that's legit. Yeah, on fire. And what's crazier is like that, yes, they're top 10 in 3-point shooting as a whole. They're number 1 in frequency. They take the most threes in the NBA, and they're still top 10 in accuracy. So per cleaning the glass, Avi, they take 44% of their shots from 3-point range. Some games, they will take more threes than twos. Think about that. That's crazy when you
I
think
love
about
it.
the ratio. And they are 8th in makes in as far as accuracy. So
Yeah.
when you combine that efficiency with the accuracy, or the accuracy with the volume, that's how you get some of these crazy offensive games. I think they blew out the Pacers one game this season where it was like 151 to 122. They can
150 is
win
nothing for
both
them, man.
ways. Yeah, it's really not. But they can win both ways. They can grind it down with their 2 incredible point of attack defenders, and then they can just shoot the lights out. Jaylen Brown can
Yes.
hit 5 or 6 threes. Tatum can hit 5 or 6. White can hit 5 or 6. Holiday can give you 4 to 5. Porzingis can hit 4 to 5. They can play a 5-out lineup. All 5 players have to be
Exactly.
guarded right up to the face, or they will kill you from there. And that opens up, guess what? The driving lanes. Then what happens is you have wide open driving lanes for Tatum, Brown, and all these other guys. And then you get a number 4 rank in the NBA in terms of rim percentage, rim
Yes.
accuracy, 69%. So it all ties together. Nothing is like, there's no stat that stands on its own. They all feed off of each other. So that's what makes the Celtics elite, is the fact that they can get their shots anywhere on the floor at any given time.
And the amusing thing about that is Derek White's the reason in the advanced stats in so many of these plus minus stats, his stats look incredible, right? But so much of it is also about the synergy of the team. Like
Mm-hmm.
per 100 possessions, with Derek White on the court, they have outscored opponents by 15.3 points per game, and his on off is a plus 12.9, right? It's just, it's the drastic gap that you'd expect from Curry a few years back with his on off numbers, where they're just floating or hapless without him and dominant with him, or Jokic. That's the sort of realm we're talking about with Derek White. But so much of that is about the circumstance, as you said. The fact that they can go 5 out has opened up the driving lanes for Derek White. And I think more than any of the other players on this roster, he needed those open driving lanes the most. He is the one who has been able to benefit the most from the fact that people are locked into where Drew is. Nobody wants to leave Porzingis. Nobody wants to leave Jaylen Brown, and nobody wants to leave Tatum. So he's the one benefiting the most from those clear driving lanes to turn every shot into an opportunity for, okay, I'm either driving to the hoop, I'm either taking a 3 where he's shooting 43% right now, or I'm just passing it off to one of these other creators to go make something happen.
Yep.
There are so many games this season where I feel like Jaylen Brown's shot hasn't been falling, but that's fine, because in those games, he can be the 5th best player in the starting lineup, because that's how good Porzingis, White, and Drew Holiday have been.
For sure. For sure. That 5-man lineup is really insane if you think about it.
Oh, crazy.
Porzingis has kind of been is kind of unlocked everything for them.
Yeah.
Because like, as good as Horford is, his play is waning a little bit. He's getting older. He's in his late 30s. Robert Williams was always hurt. You couldn't rely on him to be a staple in the rotation. So you bring in Porzingis, who all of a sudden is mostly healthy. He still misses games here and there, but he's overall healthy. He can drain threes from almost 30 feet out. He
Maybe
can
even more
still,
sometimes.
right. I mean, he is just way out there, and he has no fear.
Yes.
Sometimes the fact that players are just willing to shoot, it
Yes.
gives them more respect than if they were just than how many they hit.
And he has
It's
a
just
quick trigger,
crazy.
which scares people
True.
more.
True. Yeah, and the quick release, the high release, you
Yes.
almost can't even bother his shot. So
Exactly.
he just kind of like amplifies that whole team even more. So that was a great trade. the Celtics don't make bad trades. It's just doesn't happen. Like every player they get, it's like, hey, they're going to make a difference for us. And even if they get like a Josh Richardson and they don't really make a difference, they just flip him to another player. Yeah, you get Brogdon. Brogdon's been great. Okay, we'll just flip that again, and we'll get Drew Holiday. It's just like they just never stop making great moves. So that team is just built to win. We'll see what happens with the postseason. They've run into problems a little bit in the regular season to where they kind of get a little ISO heavy, the ball sticks, things like that. Some teams have taken advantage of that. They've lost some games that way. And the postseason can reveal some of those shortcomings. But as far as the regular season, and I called this before it started, number 1 seed.
Yep. Same
the
here.
Bucks are close. The Bucks are they're 1 game behind right now. But I can't see the Celtics giving up the number 1 seed. I can't see them giving up their status as top 3, top 5 in offense and defense. They're going to be elite the whole way. The only question for them is, can they make the finals? That's the only question. Everything else, it's like, hey, they are here. They're elite. They're incredible. What can you do about them?
Yeah, I have all the same thoughts. I mean, watching Drew Holiday this year guard, there are times when he's guarding 1 through 5. Watching Kristaps, where he's been improving every year of his career, barring he got injured. So yeah, there was a dip in his play, but that could be explained away due to injury. I thought when I went back over the offseason to go watch his play in Washington, because I didn't watch as much Washington as maybe I should have, but it's Washington.
I won't blame you for that.
Yeah, I know. I went back and watched him, and it's almost funny to me that he made the All-Star with the Knicks that 1 year, but didn't make it last year with the Wizards. That felt like kind of an indictment of the Wizards versus the Knicks, because his play last year was phenomenal. He has become so efficient in the post. He's excellent at duck-ins. The fact when his shot starts hitting from way back there at 30 feet, he is basically unguardable. And his shot blocking has been really good the last 2 years. This year especially, I mean, I could make a case that Jaylen Brown, a lot of the time, has maybe been their 4th best player, because I could argue Porzingis has been their 2nd best player. What he brings them in terms of being able to unlock that 5-out spacing, while still giving them the sort of shot blocker almost as good as Robert Williams, while also being someone who, hey, every once in a while, if you want to run an action where the center has to make some decisions the way Horford does, cool. We have Porzingis. Give it to him. He'll find the open cutter. Like it's phenomenal what they've done with that 5-man lineup. And then even watching someone like Sam Hauser, it's so funny watching Sam Hauser after having watched so much Pistons, where when Marcus Sasser or Stanley Umude comes in, and I'm like, oh, finally someone who can shoot. And then I go watch the Celtics, and they just have shooters littered everywhere, to the point where Sam Hauser comes in, and I'm just like, oh yeah, here's a 45% 3-point shooter. They'll just give him the ball on a couple plays, and he'll just let it fly from deep. It's fair, just so funny.
Not
the rich get richer.
Exactly. That's exactly what's going on with the Celtics right now, man. And they're going to keep rolling. And can't wait to see what they do against the Pistons tonight. They might win by 40. Who knows? But Avi, I think that's about it for this pod, man. This is some great conversation. Love talking about all these teams with you, man. Great first appearance on the pod. Looking forward to having you on more of these. But thanks for coming on, man. It was a really great time.
I'm just happy to be here, and I'm glad this first one went well. Well, at least I thought it went pretty well, considering what my expectations were. But
I would say it did. I would say it did, man.
That's good to hear.
Absolutely, and you'll just get better. With experience comes more success. So you keep doing your thing, man. We're glad to have you on board.
I'm learning from the best, man.
I try, man. I try. So yeah, if you guys are looking for more content from us in terms of our cap sheets, podcast, draft capital, be sure to check out notradeclause.com. If you're watching us on YouTube, all of our links are in the screen for you. But if not, our socials are going to be No Trade Clause on Instagram, NoTrade_clause on Twitter. You can check us out there. So everybody, thanks for tuning in to this last pod of 2023. We hope to see you in 2024. Enjoy your New Year's holiday, and we'll see you on another installment of NTC real soon.